Another interview that I have. I'm loving doing all these interviews. And Sarah and I are together today, not so much as part of our focus tonight is NDIS, but Sarah is another empowered woman, so I can fit her into two categories here. So welcome, Sarah. Would you like to share with everybody, for those one, maybe two people that don't know anything about you?
All right, so my name is Sarah and I am the co-founder of Swifty Matchy. I have a podcast myself and I've been running the support worker store for 2 years now, and I create a lot of content in the sector about support workers and the challenges and the do's and the don'ts and all the in between. And we get to have a bit of fun, Jackie, because when we're
Yeah.
podcast hosts, we get to interview some really amazing people doing amazing stuff in the sector. So
Yeah.
it's kind of cool that we get to reach new people and explain what's happening and who's doing what and share this, like, even though there's some really crappy stuff that happens, but there's some really good things that are happening too.
Yeah. I love that. I think that and we are here to discuss last Wednesday, but what I love about what you just said is the amazing people that are doing amazing things. And if imagine, and it'll never happen, imagine if mainstream media picked that up, like that would just be incredible.
It blows my mind, all these people out there. And the coolest thing when you get to interview these people is that they're just everyday people doing something that might have annoyed them or got a little bit frustrated and thought, I'll just build that. I'll just do that. I can see an area that I can do, and this is my niche, and this is what I do really good. So it's kind of cool that when we get to display it and show that side of the story, because we do care really well. We don't promote ourselves very well in care. That's what I
Mm,
feel that we like is missing, and that's because we're always that person first before us. The
mm,
person that we serve before us comes before
mm.
us, and we're so focused on that. And it's a good way. Don't get me wrong; that's really good. That's what we want people to put, person led and be the first there. But we also don't highlight what it takes to get there.
Yeah, and it takes a lot.
Yeah,
Mm.
I've found that too. But they've got some of the best stories, like some of the things that you hear and the success stories behind it, like that stuff I thoroughly enjoy hearing and being able to share those stories.
Yeah, and that was part of why I developed or started. I saw empowered women positive impact and my book as well to tie in with empowered women because I've got 12 empowered women in that book and a couple are in the disability sector, but then it took a life of its own. It's like we're getting interest in other countries. But I will bring us back to today's topic, which is the announcements that were made last Wednesday. I'm going to try to keep to proposed changes and plans. I think that we need to just bring down the fear and anxiety as much as we
Yeah,
can. This is what
we have to
I'd love to
emphasize
do.
the wording that he used because it's nothing set in stone just yet. It
Mm,
is putting the feelers into the market to figure out whether it sits or not and how the market will respond to it. And prior to even him talking, there's been 6 months of fear mongering in the NDIS. This was all calculated. I feel like it's quite calculated.
yeah, and one of the things that I do want to draw to the listeners, the audience, is that we've been looking at all of this since 2022, 23, and not a lot. Like there has been some changes, but not a lot has happened. I'm not saying it won't. That
Mm,
I can't say that. But one of the things that I'd like to say is that I've watched this, and when we get a big announcement, everybody goes, "Oh, what does that
mhm,
mean for me?" Right? Like we get a SIL, just for one
mhm,
example. But I've noticed that the actual changes they implement, such as funding in plans being cut by a third, like that's
mhm.
been going on for 18 months and there wasn't anything much said about that.
Every plan, every plan by far had a cut. And then to the point that as a service provider, you'd be looking, how can I make this work for this individual? Because they're used to coming to service 5 days and now they can't. They're used to
Mhm,
having a one to one, they're used to being in community, and now they can't get what they used to have. So how do
mm,
you justify that as a service? It's a massive effect. And
mm,
we knew that these cuts were coming because we can even tell by our support worker market as well, because their hours have changed
mm,
dramatically. And then we got providers cutting hours as well. The support workers get cut. It has a ripple effect already, and it probably would explain why the turn rate at the moment, I think it's like 50% of support workers are turning out, not coming in. We're losing more
mm.
support workers than coming into the sector.
Yep. Yeah. So that brings us to just reading my notes. One of the things that the minister spoke about, which was that cut for social and community. Now I know that's a bit of an area of yours that you're very familiar with. So would you like to just talk to that a little bit? See how much we can just reassure people a smidgen. We can't reassure you
We
100%.
we we can, but there I feel like history repeats itself, and
Mm,
I feel like this is a part we don't talk enough about. Remember at one point in the 80s and early 90s, institutions were closed down, and from the closing down of these institutions, people were supported into community, but also some when I say supported into community, community living, community spaces, community opportunities, whether that was our neighborhood house, our pubs, our football
mm,
clubs. This idea of coming back to community is not an old one. It's actually sorry, it's an old one, not a new one. It's
mm,
nothing that hasn't been done. And prior to the NDIS, as a support worker, I was always taught, mentored, and guided that our aim was to get people back into community, regardless whether it had to do with their funds or not. The aim is to have community living. So prior to the NDIS, part of my role was to get back people into community, whether it was going to the local gym by themselves, whether it was catching the train by themselves, whether it was going into a neighborhood house
mm,
independently as possible. So we like the funds is like I think it was 200 million that they're going to put back into community.
mm,
Fantastic. I think it's a really awesome thing to push people to, where you live is where
mm,
you want to be around and create those friendship groups within your own community and not outsource that type of stuff and not have a support worker that is paid to be your friend,
mm,
actual friends that you can create within community. Fantastic. All for it.
mm,
But the only thing that I would love to see, and I think I need a bit more understanding is how to get somebody back into community and transition from support work without. That's the
mm.
space I'm really like wanting to bit more to know. But the thing is, the information's not out yet. So
No.
we don't know. But
No.
if we have the mindset and have that positivity, like, oh, yeah, that means that the people that we provide care for are doing activities within their community and creating friendships and opportunities in their community for them. I don't see that as a bad thing.
No, I agree. Yeah, I think
Um,
that I think the way the internet is, now I'm going to show my age here, but before we had these things, mobile phones, and before we had the internet like we do now, we met people in person. When my kids were little, we did the school fete and very heavily involved in that. Like I was part of the committee and everybody came together. We even brought 2 schools together, and we had things that people that were in wheelchairs could still access, and people that, because we had those children, and adults in the community, the children in the school that were in wheelchairs, they just accessed the same things. It was accessibility
wasn't a
that
big deal. Like, it was just
no.
a part of it, and that's
Yeah,
what we want. We want people back
yeah,
into community. We want that back because it serves a person's health and well-being, and we know that people that are more happier live longer and they do more and they're more engaged, but also as, support workers, providers, how good does that feel when you get to support somebody back into community?
mm,
How good does that feel when you get to see somebody actually achieving their NDIS goal?
mm,
How good does it feel for that individual to say, "Yeah, against all odds, I have now been as independent as I possibly can. I can catch the bus. I can go
yes,
to the movies independent. I can do things that I couldn't do a couple of years ago, a couple of months ago, and I can do now." Those
mm.
type of feelings. What was the point of an NDIS goal if you never achieved them?
Well, yes, and I'm just listening to you with that. Like you're making some amazing points, and I'm just wondering, do you think? And this wasn't a planned question, but
Go for it.
but do you think? And guys, we only plan the question so we try and stay on some form of track. But yeah, outside of that, it was like let's have a discussion. But
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, do you think that because before the NDIS, there was a lot of community orientated stuff which you spoke to, and thank you. But do you think that in a way, by giving a person one-to-one funding for social and community actually created a bit of a dependency and a little bit of lack of the need for community. Just a thought.
Yeah, but I think the thing is when it happened with the NDIS, it grew so quickly and so
Mm,
rapidly, and it just felt like it exploded, and
yes.
no provider had enough support workers to
Mm,
provide support to people. And when there's not enough, you're getting new people in as support workers. They haven't got the mentoring that I had. Like, to be honest with
mm,
you, 17 years ago, I had fantastic mentors that had been doing it for years. They've been doing it for decades, and they understood key cues and how to support
mm,
people and how to re-engage community. That they knew off by heart. It blew up so quickly, the support worker space, that
mm,
there was no mentoring, there was no opportunities to support. It
mm,
became very kind of like hospitalized, like it was really kind of like strict and like to the point
mm,
that we didn't see dignity of risk and we didn't entertain any of that. It just became really kind of stuffy. I
mm,
can't quite describe it with words, but I find now for support workers, they just don't have the training that I had, to be fair.
mm,
They weren't put into courses like now you have to wait for somebody to have a plan in their plan to have training for something that I got naturally from a provider anyway. That
mm,
is a huge difference. The support workers are just not as trained as they used to be.
mm,
And that's none like it's a multiple effect, like it's a bit of an everybody effect, but not having support workers trained, I believe, is the reason why that notion of supporting somebody into community, there's that, but
mm,
there's also the other factor of, well, if I put them into community, I lose that participant. Now what do
mm,
I do? If I lose
mm,
that participant into community, I've got this support worker that's part-time. Where am I going to put them? I still
mm.
have to pay the support worker under the SHADS award.
And do you think that that has then contributed to a lot of people going independent?
Yeah. How good's the flexibility when you're
Mm,
independent? And if you already know what you're doing as an independent, just say so we're going down this past season, independents are like people that have been at providers of, worked their way up before they went to independent, not straight independent straight away. That's a debate
mm,
for another time. But
yes.
if they've done it and they've done it really well, then they get to pick their own hours. They get to work with people that they want to. They're not dictated by a provider when they're available. They're working with that person. And to be honest, the people that we serve love that personal feeling of, yep,
Mm,
it doesn't feel like I'm talking to a provider or someone corporate. I'm talking to a real person. They
mm,
understand me. They get it. They've got flexibility in their roster where somebody from a provider might not because they have Sally in the morning, Frank in the afternoon, and Albert at night. It's not the
mm,
same. I think for the opportunity for independent work is because the market wanted it to. Our people that we serve wanted it because they want
mm,
that feeling of knowing somebody quite personal, because some of
mm,
the tasks that they were doing are quite personal, but also
yeah.
our support workers want the flexibility and opportunity to earn more money as well and
Mm.
do what they do well. Big effect.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. There's a lot of moving parts that a lot of people don't understand.
Yeah.
And if you haven't been involved in the NDIS, and this is what I've been commenting on politicians' posts, and I've been going, come talk to somebody that's seen all avenues of it. Like, I'll put my hand up. You can come and ask me questions because I've been there. I've been the support worker. I've managed the support worker team in a registered provider, and I was very much on mentoring people and checking in on staff and meeting all the participants and doing all those things. And then I left and did support coordination. And then I went out on my own under I always had my company, and my focus was helping people to not need me, even as a support worker. But then I kind of fell into the compliance part of it.
Well,
Yeah.
that kind of helps with registration coming up.
Yeah, yeah.
Definitely, it's interesting what was said about registration and what's coming up with registration. Can you dive a little bit more? Because for a lot of people, it's kind of scary. Like, there's a lot of independents going, "Do I need to register?" There's a lot of businesses, "Do I register now or do I wait for them to tell me
Mm,
to register?" There's
mm,
a lot of mixed messages out there. Is there anything you
yeah.
could clear up?
Yeah, I'll give it a go. I'll give it a go. So, one of the things that people, if you've known me for a while, one of the things I've always said is let's take a wait and see approach. But while we're doing wait and see, we prepare. So, one of my biggest things is around compliance and understanding how audits work. I've done some education in that, learnings. And so, the biggest thing is that Yes, mandatory registration has been spoken about since 2023, right? The biggest thing is I do think it is going to come in some form. Exactly when, I don't know. But what I would highly recommend that people do, as an independent or even a small provider that's not registered is having your documents, policies, and procedures in place. And by in place, I mean it's not just having them, it's actually using them, it's completing certain forms. And while someone watching this might go, I don't need that. I'm an independent. I don't need it. Like I hear that 100 times over. You do. Why do you need it? For a couple of reasons. There's the NDIS code of conduct. And let's just forget about registration for a moment. You are providing a service to a vulnerable person. You need to understand what are their goals that are pertaining to your services. How are you going to help them achieve those goals? Because if they don't achieve those goals, they don't keep their NDIS funding. Like it's just that simple. Now, how do you do that safely? How do you prevent an incident? How do you show evidence that you've actually done this work? Right now, all of this can tie into showing that you're not committing fraud because, you're not like,
Yeah.
unless you are. But how do you show evidence, right? Like, showing evidence that you attended a shift is possibly a timesheet signed if you don't use apps. It's your care notes that leading into how you're helping the person with their goals, i.e., you took Mary shopping. Okay, great. What was the purpose of taking Mary shopping? So she could get the food for dinner. Did you do the shopping? Did Mary do the shopping? Did you do it together? You're building capacity. Maybe one of her goals is to be able to cook her meal by herself. And to get her there, there's a few steps along the way. It's going to take time.
That's a benchmark. Like, if you want to do a really good job by somebody, and any job that you want to do in this world, do it really well. But I would put that as a benchmark of wanting to do well for that person. But you're right. There's that element of breaking down an activity because we need to be able to tell support coordinators what we're doing, plan managers understand what we're doing then and there, even
Mm,
the families, just to give them that reassurance of what
yeah.
happened today, because if, like you said, if it's a community, that's like $70.23 an hour of an NDIS
Mm,
package
mm.
taken to go out. That $70.23 worth it.
Yes, exactly. And then there's the compliance part of it that if the payment integrity team come knocking on your door, even as an unregistered provider, which they can do, they are doing, then they're going to say, well, why are we giving you $700 this week? Like, show me why we should pay you with federal funding that $700 or that $1,000 or whatever it is. And part of that is, well, here's the timesheet to show I did show up. Here's the case notes or care notes or whatever language you want to use for those. That we worked on Mary's goal of becoming independent, and part of that was shopping. Okay, what else did you do? How did you keep her safe? So they're not going to ask you that. They're simply going to say, where's her risk assessment? Now, if let's pretend, let's take the worst case scenario of
Mhm.
what the minister has said, and personal care is now high risk and registration thing. If you were to apply for registration today, which I would say, have you got the money? Why do you want to do it? Like I'd have that conversation. I'm not going to say yes. I'm not going to say no. We're just going to break it down, and then you, as a business owner, decide. But if you go to audit today and you haven't been doing care plans, you haven't got shift notes or care notes, whatever, you haven't got timesheets, you haven't got policies, you haven't got any of that in place. An auditor's going to go, well, what have you been doing for the last 2 years with Mary? And you're going to probably not get you're probably going to have a lot of non-conformities or non-compliances. And some auditors are really honest and say, withdraw your application because the commission who assess your application are going to base it on what the auditor says and ask you some similar questions. They might even ask you for evidence that even though the auditor's seen it, they may ask you for further. So it's not just as simple as going and getting your documents, policies, and procedures from someone just for registration. It's about how are you providing safe services to the people today? And we call that best practice.
So, Jackie, can I just buy a registration on a Facebook group I've seen and be okay?
Well, Technically, yes, you could. My caution with that would be you're still probably going to have to go through an audit and an assessment as the new owner. So, Sarah, honestly, if you don't know what those policies and procedures say, if they don't represent how you personally would run the business and you haven't changed them and you're questioned and you're audited, you may have wasted your money.
So
Or,
would it
or
be
might have been a lot more money than what you could get away with it for.
so if I was a independent looking at all like to build this, can I just chat GPT it, Jackie, like and get it done that way? Or should I go to and spend a bit more time and detail on it to ensure that when it does arise and when the if I am viable?
Well, once again, technically, sure. I've tested ChatGTP and it can come up with some good things. Mind you, then I start arguing with it, and I know it's not human, but I go, but hold on, what about this? And what about that? ChatGTP. So I just want to break it down a little further. The way I operate is sure, I have the bundles, the documents, policies, and procedures. Some of them I could add additional ones too. So there's your basic one that you could do for best practice now, not registration. But when you get them, they're templated just to help you know what is ideal. But what you do is you go through it. So and this is what consultants don't do unless they're really 100%
Yep.
working with you for your business, and that takes a lot of work. Um, the one way is that if you're using ChatGTP, do you really know what you're asking? And do you know that what you get is actually correct? And how does it represent your business, your unique business? Because Sarah, you and I could both go out there and open up a support worker business and ChatGTP it or consultant it, but we don't really know whether what we've got is right. It might pass an audit, but here's the thing, that's a paper audit. It's not if you're working with someone now, your audit isn't a paper audit. Your audit is demonstrating you know what you're doing, you're keeping people safe, and you're meeting that level of compliance that the commission want you to. So, sure, you could chat GTP it, but you're not going to know what you're not necessarily going to know you've got it right. And sure, you could buy a business that's already registered, but you still have to personalize all of this. You're going to have to do some work. Or you could pay the money, start afresh. If you want to go with a consultant, go with a consultant, ask around. If you want to work with me, you can work with me. But ask around and see what you're getting for your money.
Yep.
Just ask the questions.
Few support workers that would be listening to this and thinking about whether I go business, whether I do keep doing an independent and
Mm,
see where the registration lies. A few of them sometimes get a bit scared by the auditing process.
mm.
With it, can you rest assured that for some people that auditing isn't really a bad thing? It's actually a good thing that it gives you a benchmark and something that we all work towards for providing really good quality care for the people that we serve.
Yeah, I love that question. Auditing, because you want to pass it, especially to get registration, right? But a good auditor is going to say, all right, so we're looking at what you are doing well. We're looking at what do you understand about providing personal care or what do you understand about providing social and community care? And think safety and duty of care. So, duty of care to yourself as the service provider or business, duty of care to the participant, duty of care to the community. Because if you're taking someone out in community and they get triggered, what are you going to do? Right? Like, so it's understanding all of these things. And a lot of what auditors are looking for is that incident minimizing opportunity for incidents, which is where your risk assessment comes in. Like it's when you understand, and then the feedback that you get, if you can look at it as not a criticism, not a failure, because you often get time to rectify certain things. Now, you can't go back. If you only got your documents and that, and you only did things for today because you're going to go for audit, but you've been working with someone for 12 months or 2 years, you can't go back. I don't recommend backdating anything ever. I've heard of it done. I've seen it done. It's a big no-no. You got to be honest, right? And sometimes what happens is you might be better off just getting a whole new an ABN and just starting afresh. But that's a discussion. It's not a just discuss it with somebody. I very very carefully here. But the biggest thing is think about risk. So when the auditor gives you some feedback where maybe you could improve, go see it as an opportunity. Oh, wow, I never looked at it that way. I didn't understand that. Okay, now I'm going to learn. Now I know it,
Yep.
right? You only know what you know and you don't know what you don't know.
I've got a question. Sorry.
Yeah.
So he was talking about 90% of providers being registered and 10% not. How does
Mm.
that, like, how, like, when I heard that, I was like, how does that gonna look? Like,
Well,
how do you get into, like, there's probably a few people going, how do I become the 10%?
yeah. I don't know from the minister's perspective. I just know when I think about what the task force did in 2023, 2024, that Bill Shorten put that together. Natalie Wade led that, and I do have that report, and then I broke it down for those of us that needed it broken down, and so I would think that that 10% would be cleaners and gardeners. I
Yep.
just if we go by what Natalie Wade had put down, then I think it's and any stores, but ironically, I have heard that Bunnings is an NDIS registered provider. So, I don't think Coles and Woolworths are yet, but, not
There's
yet.
still time.
There is still time. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I thought that that was interesting and not to be mean, but I couldn't kind of take him 100% serious that he understands the NDIS the way you and I do, because when he said that plan managers were pushing for plan reviews, I'm like, "Wow, I didn't know plan managers changed their role." Like, so
Mm.
his error was that that's a support coordinator. But Sarah, where do you think the support coordinators and potentially plan managers are gonna sit? Because he did discuss that one in
Yeah,
that.
it's weird about all that because they were talking about plan management getting a cut by like 30%. So at the
Mm,
moment, if you're using a plan manager, it's like $140 a month that you're spending. You
mm.
cut that, it's like $98. I haven't heard any of them be up in arms about losing, what is it, like $50.
They don't get a lot as it is per
So
plan anyway.
one part of me is like, oh, that's quite interesting that they're not complaining about that. But then
Mm,
when I look about it, there's three big players in plan management. So I was like, well, is this a way to reduce the amount of plan managers in our sector? Because a bigger guy can, outstand this storm, where the small one may not, because that is a lot at, for a small provider to lose down to $98 a month. You got
mm,
20 people, it's not the same income anymore.
mhm,
It's a
mm,
massive drop. And with plan management, there is a lot to do with it. And I sat with a lot of plan managers at a previous role, and you would hear how many times they had to send it back because it was wrong. The
mhm,
workarounds and the work around it is not that easy and simple. The amount that they send back for people to correct is quite high. So all that time, like I remember
mm,
thinking, God, is it even worth being a plan manager? Because the
mm,
amount that they've sent back, this one person in particular, I was like, they keep sending it back. Like they have by far 100, was it $140 for that
mm,
for the month gone. Like, in hours and admin spent chasing
mm.
this one thing. I think a bigger provider can get away with it. I don't not sure about the small ones yet, but yet
Yep.
they've been quiet, which I thought was odd.
Yeah, I think they're processing, because I remember when the, Allied Health got their cut and it was like, "Petition and we're fighting," and it was such so loud, and guess what? Didn't work. It didn't make any
Yeah.
difference, and I've had a lot of people that have come to me and said, "Jackie, we sign our petition about we've got to bring these changes and they can't do it without us," and I'm like, "Hold on a minute, like, let's face reality." And for all the people, all the independents or support workers in particular that say they will never bring this in because they can't do without us, I hate to burst your bubble, but they can. So if all of you left tomorrow, okay, that would be a little bit of a problem, but I work with providers how they can expand quite rapidly. And if you leave, I'm getting a bit animated. If you leave, that's your choice. And what are you going to do for a job?
Yeah. I got told there's always another support worker. Okay. I get it. Like, yeah. And like, it doesn't sound very human that
Mm,
saying a statement like that, but
mm,
there's other people out there looking for opportunities to work and love working in the support worker field as a profession. And
mm,
it might not be straight away, but eventually we all get replaced
yep.
because someone's looking.
Yeah. So for the support workers and the sole traders out there right now that are thinking that they won't bring this in, look, they've been trying to bring it in for years, so I can understand that skepticism. I can understand, yeah, whatever, which is why I say to people, watch. Like, be prepared. Be prepared for registration from the 1st of July or
Yep.
from tomorrow or from whatever. If you're running your business properly under best practice strategy right now, then guess what? It's not that expensive. All you have to do is go through, like, maybe have someone like myself just go through and check everything.
Yep.
So do a gap analysis and then prepare for audit and then do your application, which most of it you could do yourself. But once again, if you need someone to sit with you, I know quite a few people that are not after doing it for you, they will
Mm.
do it with you, which is the best gift to yourself. It might be time consuming. So, really, the cost is some time, maybe a gap analysis or a coaching session or a brief consulting session, and then your audit. It's not going to be $35,000 or something like that unless you suddenly expanded from a sole trader to a company. Then it's a whole other discussion.
It's being prepared, and I think we should all be prepared because there was
Mm,
also the talk of kicking 160,000 people off the NDIS. And then I started to do some of the maths, like, oh goodness,
mm,
like, if some people do move away from the NDIS and support stop for support workers,
mm,
that can be quite a chunk. Like if you think about it,
mm.
what, one person a week, give or take, let's just
Yeah.
like a figure here. One
Yeah.
person that you provide might be $300 a week. If you get two, maybe 6, 3, maybe 900. Yeah, let me give a
Mm,
bit of a estimation here. If
mm,
you lose some of the people that you're providing care to, that means
mm.
you're losing a bit of your income as well. So
Yeah.
it's also having, I think, strategies in place that, if and like even with plans being cut at current that no one's talking about, I know we discussed this before, but
Mm, mm,
we need to have plans in place that if people are going to leave, if I'm an independent and someone's going to leave, I need to
mm,
be able to put myself in a position that I can pick up more work or work for a
mm,
provider. And there's nothing wrong with working for a registered provider too. If you're an
mm.
independent, for a few people, I know inside dies a little because the flexibility isn't there, but the protection is.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. And just on those figures too that, I've seen in the media that it costs like, they go, "Oh, it's on average $62,000 per person," which, I mean, I'm sure like me, you've seen some massive plans and you've seen some short, like, small
I've seen
plans.
some really depressing ones.
Yeah, yeah. But I like, and people are going, "That's a lot of money." And I said, "Well, let me break it down for you because 20 hours of support work a week, which for some people is not enough. Like,
Mhm.
that's helping them get out of bed. It's only 3 hours in a day if we added it to 21. That total over 52 weeks is $72,000. Now, we haven't even added on the plan manager, we haven't added on allied health,
Yeah.
and then if they get a support coordinator on top of that, we haven't added in that. Like, so that would be actually smaller services. Like, it's not a lot.
Yeah, but then I look at when I see those hours and I try to think, I think, God, that's might be somebody trying to get out of bed to go to work. Like, just because somebody has a disability doesn't mean that their care is just providing like through shopping or
Mm,
getting to appointments. It actually might be getting somebody out to get to work as well, and they
mm,
contribute to the community as well. So
yep,
it's a bigger problem in that
mm,
sense when we need to justify it. And so one part of my thinking was, how do they know the exact number, 160,000?
mm.
Where do they pull that number from?
Then how did he decide 600 was, and then I didn't mean to cut you off, but then my brain went to, so let's say we get to 6,000 people, right? What happens when someone else needs to be on the scheme? Do we go, "Nope, sorry, we're capped." I don't know, like,
Is like my thinking is, do we move people from NDIS to aged care a lot quicker than what we previous had?
mm,
Yeah, because then the funding is different.
yes,
Yeah. So I was like, what? I was like, oh, because there's people that are past the age of 65 getting NDIS funding when they
mm,
could
yeah,
hypothetically sit under aged care.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, that's
I'm
a good point.
Yep. I looked at it as well, like, if I go back in time because I can reflect now. Back in the heyday, they used to rate people out of the system out of 5, and the
Mm,
funding was according to where you sat on your level. And
mm,
I recall when, like, level 1 was somebody that never needed services, just
mm,
a person here and there, and that used to be, like, would have been, like, $6,000 a year. Then the next
mm,
person was around, like, the 12, 14, and then
mm.
it slowly built itself up. I sort of wonder, are they bringing something like that in? Because if you sit on the lower end of the scale, you don't need as much support.
And that would almost fit in with the ICANN assessment, which is what the minister referred to as
Mhm.
that standardized one that's all about the capacity. I look, without getting shot down by the listeners and viewers. I actually think that's a really good concept because it's about supporting you. So if you need a lot of support because you have very little capacity, okay, that's valid. But if you have a high capacity and there's just maybe those occasions like people with autism and ADHD and acquired brain injury, and there's just some days where it's just too hard and you need that because then your capacity is diminished on those tough times, then that's a fair assessment.
Like, I know it could go anywhere, like, really,
Yeah.
like, how it could look, but I was just curious about, have they already, like, put it like a sticky note on certain files and went, "Right, this person here, a part of the
Yeah.
160." Like, I found that there's gotta be more things at play than we're aware of, and
Oh.
with what we're learning with AI right now, and who's not spending their plans and why.
Oh, yes. Now that's a good one as well. Like, you could just imagine them sitting there going, "Oh, yeah, they're definitely in the one,"
Mm,
so 1 out of 100, the number. And then when I was doing support coordination, I came across about 5 people who had a plan. It was like a 2-year plan, had spent nothing on it. Local area coordinator gave the company I was working for these plans, and then my boss gave them to me, and I rang up and I said, "So you've got an NDIS plan, do I?" And I went, "Yes, like
mhm.
it's this and this is what it looks like." And they went, "Oh yeah, we didn't know what to do with that."
Yeah.
Because no one had connected them with the support coordinator to understand what it all meant. Now, so then I said to her, "Well, I can come out and see you face to face and sit with you and just break it down of what it means." And she goes, "Can you email it to me, like what it all means?" And I went, "Okay, is there a reason you want it via email?" And she said, "Yes, I don't like people." Oh, well, that's a fair point. So I
Mhm.
said, but this will involve people. So why don't I email to you what it could look like? You get back in touch. And if you prepared to meet some people, we could do that. Now, this took 6 months to actually get to meet people and like to the next level. But that had been, and we were pushing because if she didn't start it, she would have been taken off the scheme.
Yep.
And it was all, and what it came down to is not that she didn't need it, it's just her fear and judgment, her trauma, and also then nobody explained it. Didn't understand it, didn't know what's a plan manager, where do I find them? Why do I need a support? Like what does core support mean? Like who does that cover?
It is
Mm,
so confusing. Even explaining quarterly funding and the rollover, whether it happens, and they're talking about taking the rollout over out.
yeah.
So at now for providers, it's really quite can be quite difficult because you're not just the only provider providing support to this person. So it's
Mm,
kind of like a game, who can get it into post quicker. So I can guarantee, who can I batch this real quickly so I can actually, sign it off and actually get paid for the support before the other
mm.
provider gets in. It's
Yeah, yeah, and
brutal.
the thing too is that they haven't even discussed self-managed participants in there.
Yes.
There was no mention of it, and I was, like, sitting there waiting,
Yeah.
managed participants, and without being nasty, if we wanna tap fraud on the shoulder. It's across the scheme. It's not just the providers. It is not just the unregistered providers. And just because you have your NDIS registration doesn't make you a good provider. Like, that's not the tick of approval. And so if you're a participant or a nominee listening to this, check people out, like, watch for it, keep an eye on the funding like you would your bank balance.
Yeah.
Do that, because at the end of the day, if you're not approving invoices, people can put whatever they want on that invoice, and unless someone goes, "That's a bit strange, that they usually do 2 hours and now they've suddenly done 4." If nobody's doing that, you've
Yeah.
just lost 2 hours of support.
And it can be it's a killer from kilometers as well. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
they traveled 700 kilometers, did they? Like you cross it. It's almost like, but as we getting like systems are getting smarter too, you'd be really silly to play with it because you
Yeah.
will get caught. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. To be fair,
Absolutely.
yeah,
And that comes back to what we were talking about before about that evidence. Because anybody can write anything in a shift note or a care note. Anyone can put anything on a plan, but I can tell you right now, I can tell when it's been made up and when it's actually true. Like, I've read some care plans and I went, "You didn't ask the participant any of this.
yeah.
You didn't confirm any of this." And I went, "Yes, I did." And I went, "No, you didn't, because that's not what you're case noting." So sure, give it a go if you really want to, but just, you will, as Sarah said, you will get caught out. But I think the biggest thing is in all of this is that many of us that have been around since day one, or even the planning stages, have gone, "That's nice." We're not commenting, like, I mean, sure, I did the breakdown and I did that live that's on my YouTube channel, but we're not focused on this being a bad thing. We're not focused on this being a good thing. We see good and we see challenges in all of it.
Think
But
aware that it needs to change. Like something needs to give somewhere along the
yeah,
line. And this is one of the things that have to give to it's kind of like having a reset and it's resetting of what good care looks like. What
mm,
the aim of the NDIS at the very beginning was about
mm,
choice and an opportunity to have control, but
mm,
also to connect with others.
yeah.
So I'm sure you were there in the Red Sea as well.
Yep, yep, and I was out there at the I remember being a new nurse, enrolled nurse that we called back in the day, at St. Vincent's Hospital many, many moons ago, and I remember being on night shift one time, and I walked in, and I went, "Where is everybody?" Like, and they said, "Well, we've got skeleton staff," and I said, "Why?" And they go, "'Cause we're protesting." I said, "At night?" And I went, "Yeah," and I said, "I'll stay on the ward, it's warmer in here, but I'm still like," and I said, "I promise I'll protest tomorrow." I mean, but we're all for,
Not the NDIS, because we all know it people have more now than they've ever had, and we you cannot deny that. There is no NDIS anywhere else in the world but Australia. Services and systems, as much as like, when I hear people complain about it, and then, like, my inner me's like, "Well, back in my day," like,
Mm,
like, like, it was worse. So,
mm,
what we got now is, like, it is good. Yeah, we want better. Yeah, it
mm,
needs to be fixed because there are parts of it that don't make sense and that doesn't rhyme, and it's not in the best interest of the person we serve because we
mm.
can see that by using all these multiple different services, it's draining their funds for what
Mm.
they actually really need to be and where they need to be in their lives because it's a whole life approach and how we can support them to live the life on their terms and just be like you and I and have an ordinary life.
Yeah, and that's what I read somewhere too, that, I won't get this right, but this person said, "The NDIS gives me what another person takes for granted."
100%. Do you
Like, yeah.
remember the first lot of when the first NDIS plans came out? And so back then I was on like I learnt block funding, so I knew that.
Mm,
I remember the first plan that I opened and went, "Oh my god, this person now gets to have an opportunity to leave their house after they finish day service. They get a
mm,
one-to-one to go to the gym to work on their health and well-being. They
mm,
never had that before. Beforehand, it was
mm,
mum and dad doing that. We
mm,
now have an opportunity on the weekend to go hang out with my mates, go join
mm.
the local FIFA footy clubs. I get to do things that I never got to do before. Now I have these opportunities. before, like, when people first entered the NDIS, it's felt like their whole worlds exploded with
Yeah.
opportunities of things that they couldn't do beforehand and we took for granted. And then
Yeah.
I see why a lot of people are quite fearful because I remember what it was like first having it, knowing that I've got this opportunity, and now that it might be taken away from me and I might be a part of the cuts as well. So that part
Yeah.
there is quite overwhelming for a few people.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that there is a lot of genuine, real fear out there for people. I remember, like a family member of mine, I call them auntie and uncle, like they're my godparents, and their younger daughter had Down syndrome. Carmel's crossed over now. But remember saying to my auntie just not long ago, and I said, like, "You just got on with the job," because there wasn't NDIS. There was group activities where Carmel could go and she could learn to cook, and she found her boyfriend and all these wonderful things. But for the most part, it fell on the family.
Yeah.
And like any parent, you worry about what happens to your children when you're not around. And the last thing that they ever wanted was Calm to go into a group home or whatever. And they made her as independent as possible because they learnt around Down syndrome and they did what they could. But imagine how my auntie's life would have been, especially when my uncle was out working, what her life could have been like if a support worker would have been able to take Carmel to the group activity or
Yes.
something like that.
Well, the aim of the NDIS was to keep people in their homes and their families longer. So
Mm,
it was the NDIS started, that's how it looked. Then in between all that, the seal space just came about, like, it came into play a couple of years
mm,
later and absolutely exploded. It
mm,
wasn't ever that way. Like, before, like, if think of the really beginning of the NDIS space, a
mm,
lot of people that it was really hard to get into a, service to live in a house with other
mm,
people, and if you did, you lived with another 4.
mm,
So it wasn't a space of 1 to 3, and it was very selective of the houses that were able to run. It
mm,
and compared to now where there's a lot more before. There were like
mm,
5 big providers and a few for-profits, but they were very small. They were
mm.
the for-profits were the majority, and the
Mm,
non-profits were, the small guys.
mm, mm. Yeah, and I think too that while it has come a long way, I think we do need a lot more governance over still homes. I have been to some and they have not been nice. And also we had to schedule the visit. It
That was
wasn't
my
yeah, and like I was going with someone because we were building a case that they asked me to come with them and just be and so we just said, "Look, I'm a family friend." They didn't know who I was, and I remember going in to this house and I just shook my head. Now, I didn't know these people and I didn't know the woman that I was visiting, that well, but I heard the story. I heard, you know and even over a period of time of us going back, but you could see the decline in her and she just didn't want to and she, lived in a house where the, support team were not the same culture as her, and she didn't like that culture food. Like, there was a lot of things that she literally couldn't eat. Wasn't, discrimination, but because that's all I would cook,
yeah.
she didn't eat, she lost weight, all these things, but the scheduling of visits and things like that. Now, I know the staff have to be safe. We have to know who coming and going, and especially when we went through COVID times. Like, I understand all of that. But this supported independent living, which the minister has made reference to as well, it says it's supported independent living, not we're running this place and it's like a hospital or whatever. So I think that when any SIL providers out there, and I think this is where the independents are going to get caught out because independents providing SIL as a team are all going to have to be registered.
Yep.
Like, and there are massive fines. This is part of the research I was doing. In the legislation, it's massive fines if you aren't once it's mandated. So, but the thing is, this is someone's home. You're
Well,
in your home. I'm in my home. If somebody said, we have to screen whether your friends come over to visit or not, go
find
away.
so wild because I like, and I didn't think that this was like I thought it was common practice. I thought it was common practice that people, when they live in a seal, they'd come
Mm,
together and discuss the menu for the week and
mm,
who's doing what and what's going on, and you meet together and have a conversation like, "Yep,
mm,
I we on Friday there's a shift swap. There'll be Elliot instead of Sally," and then
mm,
discuss. Well, actually, I feel really uncomfortable with Elliot. I'm
mm,
female, and I prefer a female support worker because I,
mm,
got personal care and things that that
mm,
fit. I thought I was used to that model
mm,
honest with you, when, it was only 5 big non-for-profit model 5 big
mm,
non-for-profits looking
mm,
over the accommodation space at that period of time prior to the NDIS. I
mm,
thought the NDIS, a model like that, would come along with it, but it
mm,
didn't, and somewhere in between, I was like, I feel like I've visited a few myself, and I was like, I don't know if I'm in prison. Like,
mm,
I've never I don't feel very independent, and I don't feel like I have choice, and when you create, like, I know I'm off topic, but when you create if you're a provider of SEAL, you need to create somebody a home so they live there for decades, not for tomorrow, and you have to provide that safety and that security for them, but also they have choice because the support workers, the house supervisors, they come and
mm,
go. They come and go, the churn rate too high. If I
mm,
can create a group of people that can live together, enjoy living together, and have a really big say about
mm.
how they live together, them staying as a unit and enjoying each other's company is by
Mm,
far more important.
100%. And it could even be the opportunity to build some capacity and have a quality life just because somebody and their funding is 1 to 3, so they're almost forced into living with other people. It's no different to Sarah, you and I in different times being uni students or whatever going and looking for housemates. It's the same thing in theory. However, we just need other people to come in and help us out.
Yeah. Yep.
That
This is
that
where
and yeah, we should get and I don't think we're off topic because I think it's all just part of it all.
it should be this. Yeah, I think it should be a standard that people meet and talk and have an
Mm,
opportunity to talk about their supports as well and what they look like and what sits well and have the right to complain and advocate for themselves. This should be normal practice. If nobody is making a complaint within your service, regardless whether if you're a registered or non-registered, if no one's making a complaint in your service and your service has a problem.
oh,
And
100%. Same as, I went to like, I go out to companies sometimes and do gap analysis, and I go, "So show me your incident register," and they go, "Sure," and it's empty, and I go, "What do you mean it's empty?"
show me your complaints register.
"Yeah." And they go, "Well, it's empty." And I go, "Yeah, but I get feedback all the time, sometimes that I don't really want it." But, you can't grow, you can't know how well you're doing if you don't get feedback. I used to do complaints management. We were called CLOs, consumer liaison officers in a big Melbourne hospital. Technically, we were the complaints department because we didn't get a lot of compliments. Like, um, 'cause, the nurses got those. I used to sit there and go, "Oh, good, another opportunity for quality improvement."
Yeah. I heard for somebody like I podcast with this dude a while back and he said to me, a complaint is a gift. It's like,
Yeah,
all right, like tell me more. I mean, because how are you to know something is wrong in your service and where it's missing if you don't
mm,
receive it? And
mm,
if you keep going without any complaints, and your service has a problem, but it also means that in our sector we're not lifting people up and letting them
mm.
advocate what they like and what they do like. And somebody that is well heard is more willing and will stay with you because you, as if I draw this back to seals, you can get kicked out as a provider of a seal house. They can vote you out and get another provider. That can be done.
Yeah, and and just to add to that, what a lot of people don't realize is that there's the sell agreement and then there's the tenancy agreement.
Yeah.
So if you've rented as the provider, if you've rented the house, to fill it with these people, and then they say, "Actually, we don't want
Mm.
you as our provider anymore," then technically they've signed a lease to live there, so you can't boot them out of the house unless you've checked your tenancy law in your state, and yes, they can bring in a different provider.
Yep. And it can be done, and there's plenty of providers out there willing to take it. Yep. So
Yeah.
you're best off doing best practice and best listening and putting these things in play prior to that even happening.
I love your passion for the industry, Sarah, and the value that you bring because you've been around for some time and seen the different layers of it. No,
These are laughter lines.
exactly, exactly. I'm 60 this year, don't tell anyone. But, but also the way like, what one of the other things that I love is that you're bringing empowerment to the participants and their family or their informal supports or whomever else, as well as the support workers, because without the participant.
We don't have jobs. Yeah, to be honest, we don't have jobs, we don't have an income, so we should be very cautious and very aware that all of this comes because somebody has a disability,
Mm,
or else we wouldn't have an income, we wouldn't have a job, everything would change because of that, and we have to acknowledge the fact that we only exist because of it.
yeah, yeah, I love it. Well, guys, we're gonna leave it here because honestly, Sarah and I could be still here in 24 hours. So, and I mean, like, we're like, yeah, we're both very passionate. If you haven't picked up that we're passionate, I'm telling you, we're passionate. And so, both Sarah and I are going to release this video, so you're gonna see different shorts. You're gonna see lots of it around. But follow both of us because between us, we kind of bring it all together. Sarah brings her strengths, I bring my strengths, and it is all about empowering people to live a quality life. So thanks for being here tonight. Really appreciate it.
Enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.